Hi everybody, welcome to a new episode of your Frederish Cast. My name's Gary and here I am once again. And today we're going to talk about a question, a wondering, if that's even a word in English, but something I've been wondering and asking myself about in the past years, in the past decades. Well, pretty much as I remember myself as a thinking entity, I've been kind of asking that. This is due to the fact that I grew up around all the four of my grandparents. And if you grew up close to any of your grandparents, you probably grew up hearing them going over and over again about the fact that life was much better in all senses in the past, right? I kind of grew up with that certainty that this was a fact because of the way they would put it, the way they would talk about it. So I'll be like, well, they're probably not wrong about it because they're living today. And when I was a kid and a teenager, I would do this thought, basically, this thinking. They're living today and they lived years ago, so they're probably right. But as you grow up, and if you're in your 30s or even more than that, you're older than me, you probably have scrutinized your own feelings and found out that nostalgia is such a very, very powerful element of our lives, right? How many times have you watched a movie that is not even a very good movie, but you like watching it every now and then because you watch that in the moment of your life, like when you were a kid or a teenager, or when you were like really young, and then you kind of bring that feeling, that nostalgia feeling associated to the movie. That is not 100%. I'm bringing a movie, but that could be anything else. So associated to that thing, the fact that you're watching that movie, in my example, is not even because it is a good movie, but at least 70% justify to the nostalgia feeling that comes with it. Yeah. So by having said that, I'm trying to say that today, or in the past years, I couldn't help but wonder how much my grandparents are right, or were right about the fact that life was better in the past, right? Of course, I'm talking about something really, really flexible, individual. For some people, 10 years ago was much better than it is today, and vice versa. But I'm not talking about specific people, specific cases. I'm talking about life in general, life with a capital L, okay? So, taking the average of the world, okay? So I would like to go through this question, and I would like to have you with me to drop your opinion here anywhere. It is possible. It depends on the platform that you're listening to me right now, but just contribute with your precious opinion here, because I'm about to bring mine. Of course, I'm no expert in it. There's no such thing as an expert in nostalgia, I believe. And of course, I am not an exception. But of course, the main purpose here is having you in contact with spontaneous and interesting conversation in English. So, but just as usual, I'm getting ahead of myself. I forgot, but I believe I don't have to tell you all every episode to go grab a cup of coffee, tea, beer, whatever it takes for you to relax, because it's Friday, ladies and gentlemen, and we're about to jump in a quite intriguing conversation. So sit down, relax, and let's do it. Well, let me just start it off by saying that I totally believe life is way, way better, much, much better today than it was 100 years in the past. And 100 years in the past, life was probably better than it was 100 years before, and so on, so forth, or so backwards, if you prefer. And Now we're gonna start talking about the reasons that get me thinking that today life is much better. And by that, of course, it is necessary to say that I'm not saying that I believe life is perfect today. I'm not saying that nothing should get better. There's no room for any improvements. Of course, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just saying that today is better than 100 years ago, period. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less, all right? So allow me to justify that by going through a short list of topics that will, I hope, help me justify my opinion here to you guys, okay? So the very first item, probably the most important one, is famine, okay? Do you know this word, by the way? Let me spell it for you. Famine, famine. It's a word that can get translated in Portuguese as fome, okay? Of course, you probably think of the word, when you think of the word fome, you think of the word hungry, that is faminto, that is the adjective, hungry, and it's noun, if it belongs to each other, but vice versa. The noun for hungry is hunger, that is fome, okay? But when we talk hunger, we're talking about when you feel like eating, okay? A hunger of feeling like eating, okay? Not starvation, all right? Starvation is when you've been around hours or days or even weeks without eating or without eating properly, okay? And famine, the word I'm using here, is a more general word to describe. For example, if we're gonna talk about Africa, for example, the whole food situation, right? The whole eating conditions that they have there, okay? When we say fome da África, all right? You don't say Africa's hunger. That wouldn't make much sense, okay? You say Africa's famine, okay? You could also say starvation, but famine is the best way to describe fome in a generic way, okay? So let's move on. It is hard to talk about the past. One of the hardest things to talk about the past is that we don't have as much information as we have, and this is one of the topics, by the way. So we don't have as much information as we have today. We didn't have internet. We didn't have the popular access to information. Not even close to what we have today. Not even close to what we have 20, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Today, far away. So we can only work with estimates, okay? And before someone says, oh, okay, so we cannot know for sure. Yeah, we cannot know for sure, but we can have an idea. Estimates don't just pop out of the blue, basically, okay? They're come after lots of data, lots of information, and lots of study of historians, of people, experts in the area of social studies, okay, and human studies, basically. Not to mention what we actually have registered about the period, right? So the estimate about famine in the beginning of the 20th century, that is the beginning of the last century, 1901, 1910, 1920, more or less. The estimate of famine in a global scale, that is in the whole world, was 40%. Yeah, you just heard me correctly. 40%. The estimation of not famine, but undernourishment. Okay, this is hard to talk about because at the end of the day, we all are. Well, I'm not sure right now if undernourished is the correct way to put it, but we don't get, what I'm trying to say is that nobody, unless you really do some extra supplying through vitamins and pills and stuff like that to complement the necessary micro nutrients that our body takes to give us health, basically takes to have us going 100%, right? Unless you do that, if you have just a normal diet, if you're a normal person, you probably don't have as much nutrition as much health in terms of nutrition as you should. Okay, but undernourishment is different. It is like the fact that you don't have at least three daily meals. Okay, so the estimate says 40%. So 40% of people who would eat once a day, okay, or who would not eat, or sometimes wouldn't even eat once a day. Okay, so this is the level of undernourishment that we're talking about here. Okay, so what is the estimate today? Today, the estimate is 9.1% of the global population. Well, I didn't say, but I don't have to, but I feel more comfortable when I say 40%. I'm talking about 40% of the whole population back in the days, right? When the population of the world was 1.5 billion, 1.6 billion people, okay? Today we have something around 8 billion people. We have 9.1%, okay? Well, that is a gigantic drop, okay? And this is the main reason, or at least step number one in our chat today, in our conversation today, that makes me believe the world is better today than it was 100 years ago. I'm not bringing the second topic in the order of importance. It's just the order of what popped in my head first when I was writing the script for this episode. But it is cruelty, okay? Especially with animals, of course, but also with people. It is known that in the 19th century, in the 18th, not much in the 20th century, but prior to the 19th century, it was the most natural thing ever to have a group of people in a public place to have a cat and start beating it in public, until the cat would die. All right. So we have a word for it today. We don't do that today, hopefully, or at least we don't do that in public so anyone can see it, right? When I say we don't do it, I mean humanity, guys. Of course, not talking about me and my friends and my family. Of course. So people don't do that today, at least not publicly. But we have a word for it today: cruelty with any animals, not only cats. If you do that to a fish in the street today, you're gonna be called mean and cruel, and correctly, in my opinion, right? There's not even discussion to that. There's not even a possibility that you don't pay, that you wouldn't pay for that if you would do such cruelty to an animal in public today, right? Especially pets, especially cats, dogs, rabbits, the animals that people usually have at home, okay? But again, any kind of animal. And I'm not talking about hunting, and I'm not talking about these things. I'm talking about cruelty, all right? And as I said, not only to animals, but also to people, I didn't come after this info, so my Google history wouldn't be as spoiled as it could, but probably the name of, I'm gonna try to avoid this word, so this podcast won't have any kind of restriction in its reach online, but some kind of sexual abuse. Well, okay, I didn't use the popular term for it, but you know what I'm talking about. I can just wonder, what was it like in the past, okay, when sexism was absurd, okay? A significant amount of men would perceive women as mere objects or inferior creatures, okay? Do we still have a lot of sexism today? Absolutely, but I have reasons to believe that in percentage, it was much more in the past, okay? Because there wasn't even a consensus over the fact that that was not cool, that was not right, that was not fair, okay? And this would open of course, I'm not saying that every sexist person would be prone to be cruel, to, to beat someone up in the street for no reason, to beat someone home, for a reason or despite of the reason. Of course, I'm not saying the two things are connected, but that there's a big door in between them that can easily be opened. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Okay. So this, I would bring us the second evidence. When I say second evidence, when I say evidence for all the evidences I'm bringing here, I mean evidences that you don't have to study to be aware of. Anyone can just with the minimum observation criteria get to it. All right. Well, the next point here is health. Well, before I say anything, let me just talk about the life expectancy, the estimated life expectancy 120 years ago, more or less, 100 years ago, 120 years ago. That is the beginning of the 20th century. It was 32 years old. For 32 years was the life expectancy, the world life expectancy, 120 years ago. What is it? What is the life expectancy today, in case you don't know? The world average life expectancy, 66. So we managed to double that. In this, well, some people will disagree, and that's okay. But I really have a hard time believing that this is mere coincidence. Okay? That's no coincidence. That's not a coincidence. Life got better. Today, talking about health, we have much more governmental guarantees over health, although we're still far away from the ideal model. We're still far, even further away from perfection. Yeah, obviously, but at least we have something to complain about. 100 years ago, people wouldn't even complain, wouldn't even have anyone anywhere or anyone to complain about it. Okay. Not to mention the evolution of science, the evolution of medicine in the past decades. I don't even go far to say, hey, what if you need a surgery to remove a kidney, for example, or a tumor, right? I'm not even talking about that. Of course, this is also one thing, but I'm in more simple things like dentistry, for example. Do you know that in the beginning of the 20th century, aka last century, at the beginning, it wasn't a habit even in the big countries, even in the United States, in England, in Russia, okay, in all the world. There wasn't a habit. People didn't have the habits we have today. That is brushing our teeth every day, okay? And I know many people today don't brush their teeth as many times as necessary. That is, I believe, 3 or 4 times a day. But at least everybody would just do that once or twice a day, okay? Anyone, unless you're really, really poor, but even if you're really, really poor, you can do that. That's no excuse. I'm sorry if I sound rude by saying that, but that's what I think. To brush your teeth at least once a day, okay? And I don't know about you, but I take extra care of my dental health, and I have to go to the dentist every once a year, and there's always something to do about it to get, to and I'm not talking about aesthetic procedures. I'm talking about real procedures. I don't even know if that's the correct word. If there's a dentist or a dentistry student listening to that, just let me know, okay? But and this will cause. Have you ever heard the phrase? Have you ever heard the saying? Health starts in our mouth. I don't know if that can get translated like that to English, but that's it. If dentistry, if brushing our teeth wasn't something as common 100 years ago, can you imagine 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago? Yeah, I think 1,000 years ago, no one would disagree, would dare to say that 1,000 years ago was better than it is today. Okay, so I'm just making a point here. All right, guys. So that's it. For health reasons, I still believe, or this point helps me believe, that life is way better today than it was 100 years ago. Okay, this is a little controversial even for myself. That is entertainment. Okay, we had lots of entertainment 100 years ago. Music was always there, even the poorest people. I hear that from my grandparents, that they could listen to the radio, that they could go to events, parties, celebrations where there would be someone playing a musical instrument. So music was around as a source of entertainment, all right? Okay, this is for everyone. So pumping up to a higher society, that is people with some more money power, some more purchase power. 100 years ago, there was a theater. There were the theaters. Okay, you could go and see a movie, a mute movie, a soundless. I don't even know how to call that in English, but the movies without audio, right? Charles Chaplin, first movies, by the way. So, if you weren't as poor as 80%, as poor as 80% of people in Brazil 100 years ago, you could at least once a month go watch a movie, a Hollywood movie maybe, okay? And that's it. So there was this source of entertainment. There were, and just like we still have parties and celebrations going on today, there was in the past. That is something that hasn't changed much, at least compared to the first two things I've mentioned, that is theater and movies and music. Yeah, but even though there's no way you can compare what people had, the poor people had the possibility of listening to music compared to what we have today. Can you imagine you time traveling 100 years in the past and showing your cell phone? I know it would be without connection because the internet wouldn't exist, but if the music, the songs you have saved in our cell phone, even if it's just say 20 songs, 20 tracks there, you would play that in front of anyone, from the rural workers, poor people, the so-called jeca here in Brazil, to the top richest people back in the days. They would all be extremely surprised. Okay, they would go crazy. Maybe not with the music you would play. You would just play a reggaeton or something like that. They wouldn't get psyched as much. Maybe yeah, I don't know. You should time travel and check it. If you do that, just go back. Remember to go back and tell me. Okay, but that's it. I don't have to go much over this specific topic. I think even those who think that life was better 100 years ago will agree with me that in terms of entertainment, we have many more possibilities, today. Information. Something happens in Japan right now, and 2 minutes later, or maybe 1 minute later, I know it here in Brazil on the news. Okay, so globalization, or more than globalization, the thing that made globalization possible, that is technology, the telecommunications, I don't even have a adverb to describe that, as how much they grew, how much they evolved in the past century, in the past decades. And this, of course, allows us to have more access to information, all sorts of information, from what happened with the Japanese Prime Minister right now, if something actually happened to him, of course. Hopefully not. Hopefully he's safe. But anything happens there, to knowledge in general. Okay, I can pretty much check. Let me just share this personal story with you guys. A few hours ago, I was walking in my neighborhood here. I live in a gated community, so-called condominium. And in the house in front of mine, I saw a bird, standing. somewhere in the house, and I just passed and I just stepped back and I realized it was an owl. It wasn't a regular bird. It was an owl, a burrowing owl, to be more specific. If you don't know this word owl in English, I'll spell it for you. O-W-L, owl. That is the bird that we call coruja, okay, in Portuguese. So there was an owl there, okay? I started talking to people around here, my wife and people around here, what kind of owl was that? And I took a picture of that and Googled it. And now that's the reason why I know it is a burrowing owl. It is still here, hopefully. Hopefully the cats won't mess with it. But I'm just saying that to show you, to make my point of how much more accessible information is today than it was in the past. I'm not gonna get into the discussion of if people, especially youngsters, the young people, use that information properly, okay, or as much as they could and should. I'm not gonna get into there because that's a big controversy. Maybe we can just have an episode about it. But the fact is, the truth of the matter is, we do have much more access to information today than people had 100 and something years in the past. And that will be all for today, ladies and gents. I would really like to appreciate one more time your lovely, your wonderful, your blissful company here. I really hope you have learned something. Please feel free to write your comments, disagreeing or agreeing with me, or adding more information to what I said, sharing with me your thoughts on the subject. That will all be pretty welcome. So this is it for today's episode. I see you in the next one. Bye.